Okay, I'm gonna be honest with everybody. I love following the random Empress Theresa account there on the Twitter twatter bird site, because if you genuinely look at it all, it will give you excellent examples of what a writer does when they're first starting out. Because a lot of Uplift Protocol's first draft was a whole lot of like, hey, this is kind of like a laundry list of everything. Because at the time when I was starting out, I didn't have much tools in my toolbox, and I was just trying to see like, how do you get all these words together to make some sort of sense, and how I want to basically go about things. And so there's an example that popped up where they're putting up, okay, here's what Teresa is saying. It turned out full-scale models were not needed for everything. Fortunately, or the size of the building would have needed to be many acres in size. Airplanes and artillery pieces could have been represented by downscaled models. I had to give Hal the correct dimensions anyway. And looking at that, like, you can break down paragraphs of stuff in this book to where use it as a writing example of like, okay, how would I fix this sentence, or how would I fix this dialogue? It really is invaluable in that way, and you don't even have to buy the book or download it. You could just look at the first few chapters sample thing that's available on Amazon and be like, how would I fix this? And I even attempted to write in his style for Uplift Protocol, and then how Eliza has mostly first person narration, so I gave it a shot. I took out the assaulting Artox ships one by one, knowing the dimensions of their weapon systems. My father gave me intelligence models to work with. Take out the engines first. Since I was impervious to conventional weaponry, I didn't worry about the offensive systems they could muster against me. My HUD took care of the rest. I didn't even have to input any data. The counter-electronic suite did the heavy lifting. Smashing through the hulls was easy. In the thing is, yes, Norman's book does a lot of telling, but it's telling without any kind of punch. It really is just, it go from data point to data point, but it's Teresa basically almost having what do you call it, the run-on thoughts, like a impressionism kind of thing, where it's just one sentence after another of like a kind of like a disjointed story. I mean, you could still use a lot of telling in your story. I'll link Star Shatter below. That I think is a pretty decent example of a story that is majority telling, but it's telling that's spiced up with different actions of the characters and things like that. It's not conventional in the sense of, most of American style stuff where they want you to be like show don't tell, yes, but it really is an invaluable resource. And even do this with your own writing. Look at your old drafts and like with new eyes, to where you're like, okay, I've had X amount of months experience under my belt now. You'll see that you have legitimately improved. Really. I could even take, one of the recent things that I've put down. Here, let me go pull it up. Okay, this is the part where, Aren is pacing about. Just to give a slight context, she just got saved by Hillary through the Dark Mirror network because she was about to get captured, because Eliza was riding a high of being like backed by a lot of the different people in the Defender Corps. Because yes, I totally took a lot of that from Power Rangers and Green Lantern and stuff, where the Defender Corps putting all their stuff together basically makes, by their power combined, not really Captain Planet, but like a whole lot of oomph, and she can usually use that power to great effect. It'll come up later again, but even just to use a little bit of example, and I will probably even go back to this stuff later again when the story's done, and I'll look at it with new eyes again, like even 6 months to a year from now, and be like, okay, I've got to add other tools to my toolbox here. But basically, the Mummy paced about. This place was hideous. All curves but lifeless. Stark uniformity. No color. How boring. An iris opened. A gaunt keeper with a cross-shaped scar on her face glided in. You were crafty, but to pull off the switch desired, you will need to get close to the target and use this teleportation nexus. Yeah, because the bad guys usually kind of condescend to each other. You know, it's like, oh, my plan is better. No, my plan is better. Oh, I'm gonna backstab you. No, I'm gonna backstab you. It's I mean, that's the thing. That's the reason why usually the bad guys will lose, guys. But you know. She handed a small white oval over to the Egyptian sorceress. The keeper shocked her guest with a request. When you take over Lannis's life and confidants, find out what happened during Murphy's birth. Nearly hissed the hated name. The one emotion that Ren understood all too well. Clawed fingers plucked at the keeper's scar, empty eye sockets burning with unholy light. I can fix this. Rotted teeth moved in. You know, because, again, Ren will fix your wounds for a price. Much to Medusa's regret. I mean, she didn't figure that one out until later. Because that's the reason why Medusa has a more human form again nowadays. But Ren's healing comes with a price. But see, you can still tell people stuff, but if you mix it in with like other little bits of dialogue, a little bit of actions, it goes a long way in comparison to Empress Theresa, where it's just she keeps telling and telling and telling. And in this case, I can see where they're coming at with like, hey, with a little bit of showing it to where I broke it down to where it's not showing in the sense to me where you have to get the full visceral kind of all five senses piled into there. To me, showing is vital with the character's direct action, like a character throwing a punch in anger, or if they're shielding someone. Yeah, that's why you can use combat stuff or action scenes to kind of develop that part of your character. But Empress Theresa doesn't really have that. Theresa just tells you after the fact that, oh yes, I did this. You know, oh, I told Hal to do this. But he doesn't go out of his way to be like, okay, Hal gets launched into the stratosphere and hooks up with like other probes to form like a network, but he doesn't showcase any of that. He doesn't showcase, you know, Theresa actually taking actions. He just tells people about the actions that Theresa has taken, and it all ends up being quite one-noted, you know, where you don't see a change in how the prose is going. It's not sprinkled with any other stuff other than the one run-on kind of singular beep. You know, it's like a complete flat line. So you can learn how to spice up your writing just by looking at other books that, you know, they try, but you can see easier, or at least pick out stuff that is still in need of a development. Because I'll be the first one to say, even with Uplift Protocol, yes, I could always develop things further. I could always cut other things back. You just got to remember to get the drafts done and just like get it out there and then keep going. Because you have to try to, in my opinion, try to balance things. Like, yes, try to get some of the flubs that you can catch, but you're not always going to get every single typo. Even after you publish something, people will still still find something later. So I guess that's all for like this quick little ramble today. It's far easier to find things in other people's work because for the most part, when you're reading it, you know, unless you're coming in with a very specific mindset, even just as you're just watching the words on paper, it's just like, oh wait, how would I have reformed this? You know, most of the times if you're both a reader and writer, you'll start looking at things that way and be like, oh, I should have used that in my writing. That's an interesting tool. You know, that's at least what I try to do. I try not to focus too much on beating myself up. That can always come later when it's like, how should I fix this or edit that? But yeah, always just come back at stuff with fresh eyeballs.